I did over 500, possibly close to 600 runs in Wanderer's artifact domain. I spent over 10 to 12k resin on his artifacts alone. Now was that worth it? Well, I guess we're about to find out. I hope you enjoyed the video. Bow before me, worms! Wanderer, aka Scaramouche, aka Head Guy, aka whatever you named him. Mummish is in my case, don't ask. You guys were responsible for that. A broken puppet with an inferiority complex, but at the same time an amazing helicopter. You can fly around with him and do cool stuff, I mean just look at that. And he also kicks ass. Right, let's get into it. Hello everyone, I'm Valeria Hawthorn, and in this video we're gonna go over Wanderer's build, his artifacts, weapons, skills, all that good juicy stuff, and most importantly, we're gonna determine whether my pain and suffering was worth it. I will have timestamps below, so feel free to skip to any parts that are of interest to you since this is gonna be a long video. To keep things short, I got Wanderer when he first released and farmed his domain for a month straight, since that set is considered to be his best in slot. On top of that, I spent over 30 fragile resin on him only to end up with a very mediocre build.
Disgusting!
Back then, I spent 6.5 to 7k resin alone, and since his rerun got announced, I spent probably around another month in his domain, and all of that together adds up to 10 to 12k resin. It could be more, but at this point I don't even want to math anymore. Divide that by 20 resin per artifact run and you end up with 500 to 600 runs. Now of course I wasn't completely insane and used condensed resin instead, but for the shock factor let's go with 500 to 600 runs. And now, was all of that worth it? Well, we're about to find out, I guess. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about his build in general. When it comes to his weapons, I am using an R5 Witsit, that's the best I have for him. One of the few good options I have for him. As you can see, I don't have any 5-star catalysts, but any of the 5-star catalysts are honestly great on him, with the exception being perhaps Baishu's catalyst. Of course, his best in slot weapon, the Teluya Bell Thingy Wingy, is his best in slot weapon, but the Lost Prayers, Memory of Dust, the Skyward, Atlas, and yeah, generally all of the 5-star weapons are good on him. When it comes to 4-star options, there's a bunch of decent options as well. One is the Witsit that I am currently using, the other is the Solar Pearl. It gives a lot of crit rate, but since he scales off of crit rate a lot, I tend to use the Witsit most of the times. The Rodoko Tails, if you happen to have that weapon, it was from a limited time event. It's really good on him, and yeah, that's generally pretty much the weapons you would use on him. Now when it comes to artifacts, yes, I am running a 4-piece Desert Pavilion. Now, was it worth all the resin? That's questionable. But if you don't have the Desert Pavilion set, some other good options are the 4-piece Shimenawas. Chances are, if you have farmed the emblem set, that you ended up with an amazing 4-piece Shimenawa set and your Raiden is somewhere in the corner crying with flat defense and HP stats all over her artifacts. But the 4-piece Shimenawa is also a good set on him. Another good option is the 4-piece Echoes of an Offering, but this set is a little bit tricky. You pretty much could only use this set if you have low ping, so anything under 60 at most. But another good alternative is combining 2 and 2 pieces, so you can use any of the 2-piece Anemo damage bonus pieces. That includes the 2-piece Viridescent Venerer and the 2-piece Desert Pavilion set, and then combine it with a 2-piece of the attack percent set. So that includes the Echoes of an Offering, the Vermilion Hereafter, the Shimenawas, and Gladiator's Finale. So anything that's 2-piece Anemo damage bonus and 2-piece attack percent is gonna be a pretty good option for him, generally speaking. You could in certain situations run a 4-piece Viridescent Venerer, although it's better to use on other characters. Generally you could use it on Scaramouche if he's the only Anemo in your party, but still it won't be as great as, for example, the Shimenawas or a 2 and 2 piece set, or the Desert Pavilion of course. That's generally everything related to his build. And when it comes to artifact subsets, you do want to mainly focus on crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent. Some energy recharge here or there could be good, although his burst, while it deals good damage, is not the main part of his kit, so even if you don't manage to get your burst back every rotation, it's not the end of the world, and yeah, you don't need to worry too much about energy recharge for Wanderer, which is great. But yes, when it comes to his artifacts generally, you want attack percent on your sands, you want animal damage bonus on the goblet, crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. Generally speaking, you'll probably be looking at getting crit damage since he does scale off of crit rate, and he gets a lot of crit rate naturally. But when it comes to his talents, like I said, the burst isn't the main part of his kit. His main part is his normal attacks and his elemental skill, which you use to fly up and then normal attack or charge attack and deal damage to the enemies. So these are gonna be your main priority when it comes to leveling up your skills. First the normal attacks, then the elemental skill, and then you can level up the burst as it does deal good damage. And Scaramouche has a couple interesting passive skills. One is the Jade Claimed Flower. What does it do? So if your Wanderer swirls some elements, he gets different buffs depending on the elements he swirled, and he can have up to 2 buffs at most. So that makes him very flexible in terms of team comps, and it could be beneficial to run him with characters with different elements. So what do they all do? When you swirl Hydro, your Kugoryoku point cap is increased by 20. This is the duration of his elemental skill. You start with 100, so you get 20 extra, so it lasts longer if you swirl Hydro. With Pyro, it increases your attack by 30%. With Cryo, it increases your crit rate by 20%, which is massive. If you swirl Electro, when your normal charge attack hits an opponent, you get some energy restored back to you. And again, you can have only 2 of these buffs at most. His other passive, as you can see, is while you are attacking mid-air, you see the thing on his back light up, and you will also hear a sound. It will be easier to pay attention to the sound rather than to watch for the skill to light up, because it can be hard to see sometimes when there's too many attacks going on. When you see that, when you hear that sound, and when you dash, first of all, you don't consume extra points, which is basically your stamina when you are flying with your elemental skill. You will not consume any points for dashing, and you will additionally fire off 4 wind arrows that deal extra damage. So you don't want to pay attention to that, and you can dash around without consuming stamina and dealing some extra damage as well. When it comes to his constellations, he is great at C0. Of course, if you choose to go for some of his constellations, then do it, but you don't need them, of course. His C1 increases his attack speed by 10%, and additionally those wind arrows that get shot out deal an additional 25% damage of his attack. His C2 increases the damage of his burst when you use it at the very end of your elemental skill once you run almost out of stamina. His C3 and C5 increases his levels. His C4 increases the amount of buffs you can gain from his passive skills up to 3 instead of 2 how it is normally. And with his C6 you deal an additional instance of damage when you are using his elemental skill, and that is considered normal attack damage. And once you fall below 40 stamina on your elemental skill, you restore 4 points, and that is triggered every 0.2 seconds, and it can happen up to 5 times, so you can restore 20 points, which I guess is pretty much the same thing that happens when you swirl Hydro. But yes, overall he does not need constellations, he's great just like that. When it comes to his team comps, he's a very flexible character like I already pointed out earlier in the video. He can fit in a variety of different team comps, you can pair him up with a lot of different characters, but we can't mention Wanderer without mentioning Faruzan. She is his dedicated support. She is a great support overall for animal carries such as Wanderer and Xiao, and even if you don't have her at C6, you can still use her. I did use her quite a lot when she was still just C2, then at C4, and C6 just makes all the more difference. Then you can also run someone like Bennett to further buff your Wanderer's damage, and the first slot can be flexible, although it is recommended that you run a shielder or someone that can decrease his resistance to interruption, because he has a little bit of a problem. He is a very squishy boy, so he can easily die if you don't have a shielder or anything to protect him. And if you don't have any kind of resistance to interruption, he gets knocked around like crazy and is very annoying. You lose out on a lot of damage. Someone touches him and he falls on the ground and he can't get up, and it's a bit embarrassing. So you can run someone like Zhongli in that instance. You could also run double Pyro. You can run Euthymia or Dia for the Pyro resonance together with Bennett. You could also run a Permafreeze team, which I will be running later in the video, together with Xingqiu and Layla. Or you can even go with Diona. You can run a 3-animal team with someone like Kazuha as a 3rd character, or Venti, I'm still Ventiless, or Jean, namely with C4 Jean, but not a lot of people have that. You can run a Scara National team. You can run Scaramouche in a Hyper Bloom team. He does amazing in that, but then again anyone does amazing in Hyper Bloom teams. There are just so many different options for him. You can also run Yunjin. So just use the characters you have and you enjoy playing and try and make a team around that, and you'll probably end up with a nice result regardless. As you can see here, when I open all my Desert Pavilion pieces, there's definitely a lot. But that's not all of them. Of course, I don't keep the ones that I had farmed way back in December. I mean, come on, that was 8 months ago. Imagine that, but probably double or triple. That's the sheer amount of artifacts I've got. Let's take a look at his artifacts right now. So this is his flower, 11 crit rate, 17 crit damage. The other stats are rather copium. His feather is good. Crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent. His sands is not bad. I would have loved to be able to upgrade it, but unfortunately, that hasn't been the case yet. I did end up getting a copium, very copium circlet, but this way I could steal Shao's goblet, my best animal goblet. Now let's look at his overall stats. He has 1.6k attack, 61.9 crit rate. He can go up to 69 crit rate, but then his crit damage suffers and is around 220. So I sacrificed a bit of crit rate for extra crit damage. And then we have a bit of energy recharge. Like I said, it's not too important on him. And of course his animal damage bonus. So that's his current build right now. When it comes to his talents, they are 888. Can I triple crown him? Ah, yeah, of course. Never mind. I guess we're not triple crowning him today. And now, here is some footage of him performing in the Abyss. For this Abyss, you either had to run him with Hydro or Cryo, preferably if you run him on the first half because of the Pyro Abyss Herald in Chamber 1. And also on the second half, you wanted Hyper Bloom, so unless you ran Hyper Bloom Wanderer, yeah, chances are you probably ran him on the first half. But if you want to, of course, you can go with a Hyper Bloom Wanderer for the second half. Anyone can work with Hyper Bloom, but is that what Wanderer was made for? Yes, those teams are fun, you can play them without any problem, but I do think that Wanderer was made to be his own DPS character and have his own teams rather than to fit him in a Hyper Bloom kind of situation, even though that works as well. So if you enjoy doing that, then you do you. I initially tried him out only with the 4-piece Desert Pavilion set, but I later decided to try him on 4-piece Shimenawas as well as 2 and 2-piece attack percent and animal damage bonus sets, and all of them worked pretty well. For each of the different chambers, you will see he was using a different set, and you can see that his performance was more or less the same. I first tried him out with Xingqiu and Bennett, but I later decided to go for Layla instead of Bennett for a permafreeze team, and honestly, I think that worked better. And they performed very well in this current Abyss, and it was really fun to play. He would in most cases perform very well in chambers 1 and 3, but he would be occasionally a bit slower in the second one because the Shadowy Husk guys wouldn't group up properly and they would delay me. But with RNG on your side, you can clear that chamber pretty fast as well. Although the second half isn't too difficult, you just need a strong Hyper Bloom team and you're done with it. And now, despite Wanderer being one of the limited characters currently running on the banners, this Abyss didn't really feel like it was made for him, but still, he was able to clear the content easily, and that just shows how flexible he is. If you need Hydro, Cryo, you can fit them in his teams very easily. If you need other elements, you can substitute them. He's a very flexible character, which is good because you don't need some specific niche teams to play him. Hell, you can even ignore Faruzan for the most part and he'll perform well. But I always use him with Faruzan since my Faruzan is C6, so it wouldn't make sense for me to not use her. But still, if you don't have a C6 Faruzan, you can calmly use him without her. Or you can still use him with her, even with her constellations being lower than C6. And now came the time for me to try and compare all of the artifact sets. Now, I originally used to have a 4-piece Echoes of an Offering set, but turns out that thanks to my artifact addiction, I foddered some pieces, so I was left with just a 3 set, and I had to do some emergency Echoes farming, and I managed to get a very sad looking attack sands, but I tried to make it so that his crit damage would always be relatively the same. When using all of these sets, his stats would be pretty comparable, so I went to my trusty old mechanical array and tried to see what his damage would be in a team with buffs. But here's the tricky part: when you use the wit set, you get a random buff every time, and so I had to run multiple tests to try and get the correct buff so I could compare all sets equally. I tested him out on the Desert Pavilion, where he reached numbers as big as 94k. That was with the wit set's elemental damage buff. With the 2-piece attack and 2-piece animal, he got to 84.9k. Then with the echoes, well, I mean, the echoes is quite laughable. He went up to 75.5k, and then came Shimenawa's turn, and I ended up realizing that I had the wrong buff here, and so I got 80k, but that was with the attack percent buff. And for comparison, I got the 4-piece Desert that also got 80.8k with the attack percent buff on the Wizard, whereas the Shimenawa got 80.3. In order to compare them all equally, properly, I got rid of any kind of buffs, any kind of Wizard effects, and I went and beat up my old pal Masanori. And here you can see his numbers. With the 4-piece Desert it was 15.6k, then he reached 15.5k with the 2-piece attack and 2-piece Anemo, a very close second. With the 4-piece Echoes it was a laughable 12k, we can throw it out the window, it's just a weird set in general, it's a very niche one as well. And then, just as I was thinking, oh yes, the 4-piece Desert Pavilion, it's doing a little bit better than the 2 and 2-piece set, but it's still an improvement, right? I made the best decision of my life to dump 10k resin into that domain. Well yes, but no. The 4-piece Shimenawas went up to 16.7k. Yeah. But at that point I was still thinking, no, there's no way, the Desert Pavilion would still perform better, right? Well, we'll see about that. And so remember how I said that I wouldn't be crowning him? Oh, that was a lie. I did what any rational person would do and bought the Nobushi drops from the Star Glitter shop and went ahead and crowned him. And that was the time for the real test. What would be a Wanderer video without beating up some inferior puppets? So then I went and beat up his puppet, and that was with him having crowned talents. Everything started off great. We started off with 105k damage from him without the Wetset buff. Then I went and did a couple more tests to see what his maximum damage would be. He got 135k with the attack percent buff from the Wizard and went up to 148k with the elemental damage bonus buff. And I was thinking, great, this is fantastic. But then my intrusive thoughts creeped in and were like, why don't we test out the Shime? Is it gonna do more damage? And so I put him on the Shimenawa set and went to beat up the puppet again. And I was starting to get worried a little bit after seeing that he was dealing 106k without a Wetset buff. And then of course I had to try and get the elemental damage buff to see what his maximum damage would be, and oh boy, 150k! Now granted, it's like 2k or 1 point something increase from the 4-piece Desert Pavilion, but the point of this video was whether it was worth it or not for me to spend so much resin in his artifact domain, and now I'm questioning all my life choices. And also, there was another puppet we needed to beat up. We had to go beat up our mother, and for that I went with a Hyper Bloom team because she needs Electro, or the other option was to go with the normal team and beat her up before she transforms. There we go. Child versus mother, or brother versus sister, technically, I don't know, I lost track of the whole family situation. Ah! Wait! No, wait, calm down, I know we haven't talked in a while, but the goal is to kill her before she transforms, because we don't have any Electro on this team. Where are your crits, my boy? Okay, and I think he ended up with a shitty buff, so that's great. Oh, okay, dear, tank this. You're strong. Thank you. Just don't kill Faruzan. Okay, I think we may got this. I have no idea where she is. There we go. Well. Huh. Well, that was easier than expected, and we didn't even perform that well, but that was easier than expected. Okay, I guess mission accomplished. We beat up the 2 inferior puppets. Who's the superior puppet now? But now, to answer my question, was it worth spending 10 to 12k resin on his artifacts? Yeah, most definitely yes, because how else would he do 94k per charge attack damage, maybe even more? But also, the other artifact set in his domain is amazing, the Flower of Paradise Lost. If I hadn't farmed for his set, how else would I have gotten so many good I mean, this one I'm using for the Elemental Master, but how else would I have got it? Just look at this. This is disgusting. This is such a horrible piece. Look at this. Look at this. I was luckier in getting... but my luck. I mean, just look at this and then compare it with this. Absolutely sad and pathetic. How else would I have gotten so many good Flower of Paradise Lost pieces that I can then put on someone like Cookie, on someone like Dia, and then be accused of having a C2 Nahira because my Dia deals 63k virgins. Which, by the way, I don't have a C2 Nahira. If you want to know how I achieved that, I do have a video on Dia. It's pretty cool. Go check it out. If you're still wondering how to build her and what to do with her, I suggest you giving that little video a little checkaroo. But yes, maybe I am coping. I probably am coping a little bit. I mean, look, listen. If you're still wondering whether you should farm for his set, if you do have Wanderer, then it's probably best to farm for it. If he's gonna be one of your main characters, one of your absolute favorites, the one you're gonna use a lot, then sure, go for it. If he's just a side character that you're gonna bench for a little bit and you won't really use too much, then you may get away with putting, you will get away with putting any of the other sets we discussed so far. So yeah, am I coping? Probably a little bit, but I mean, how can I not? I wasted 10,000, 12,000 resin on a bunch of artifacts, on a bunch of little decorations. And will I do it again? Probably. If you wanna see me dump more resin, copious amounts of resin into artifact domains, feel free to subscribe and stay tuned because we are getting a new domain in Fontaine and it seems like it's gonna be very good. So I'm probably gonna dump all of my resin into that and see what happens. But yes, I hope you enjoyed the video. I do have more exciting videos coming up on the way, so stay tuned for that. Very excited for Fontaine. If you want to catch more of me, you can watch my streams over on Twitch or sometimes here on YouTube as well. Occasionally, I still sometimes stream here, I promise. But yes, if you want to stay up to date with me, the best way to do that is to follow my socials or join the Discord server and get your updates there. And also come hang out and chill with us. We're quite chill. Yeah. But have fun, take care, keep smiling, lots of love. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Bye.